Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We'll be reading from Canto 9, Brilliant as the Sun, a retelling of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Celestial Dynasties, chapter number 15, Lord Parashurama. Mukam karoti vachalam, pangum langayate girim. Yat kripatamam vande Shri Gurum Din Tarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hariyam Tatsat. Parikshit said, "You said Pururva and Urvashi had at least one child. They had 6 sons, Ayu, Shrutayu, Satyayu, Raya, Vijaya and Jaya." He briefly mentioned the sons of the 4 younger brothers before elaborating on Vijaya's dynasty. The 4th generation in Vijaya's line was a sage called Jahanu. This powerful sage lived during the time of King Bhagirath, the descendant of King Sagar. Bhagirath had performed severe austerities to petition the river Ganges to descend from heaven to earth. During Ganges' travel across the earth following Bhagirath's chariot, the river submerged Janu's hermitage. Janu became angry and with one sip drank the entire river. Seeing this, Bhagirath became morose and repeatedly petitioned the sage to release the Ganga. Finally, gratified by Bhagirath's prayers, Janu pushed Ganga's waters through one of his ears. From that day, another name of Ganga has been Jahnavi. The daughter of Janu. 6 generations from after Janu was King Gadhi. He had a daughter named Satyavati, who married the Brahmin sage Richika. Shukadev said the circumstances of their union resulted in the birth of Parashurama, a celebrated incarnation of Vishnu. Listen as I explain what happened. Sage Richika's skeletal frame was draped in a stained deerskin, his matted hair piled high on his head, his nails long and dirty. He entered King Gadhi's court, his bare feet leaving muddy marks on the polished marble of the floor. An odor of wood smoke hovered around him, contrasting with the costly aguru incense that wafted through the palace chambers. Gadhi, decked in flowing silken robes embroidered with gold thread and studded with valuable gems, leaned back on his throne, holding his fragrant flower garland to his nose, concealing his disdain for the niggardly-looking sage. He said, "Welcome to my court, good sir. How may I serve you?" "Know me to be Richika here with a request for charity, my dear king," replied sage. "I desire the hand of your daughter, Satyavati, in marriage." The king said nothing. Satyavati, was he serious? How could he give his beautiful daughter to this old hermit? But how too could he refuse? A Brahmin's displeasure and possible curse were not to be taken lightly. So those were the times that they could not offend the sages. "My dear sir," said King Gadhi, "I belong to Kusha dynasty and aristocratic Kshatriyas. As aristocratic Kshatriyas, we ask for a dowry for our daughters. Please, therefore, bring at least 1,000 horses, each as brilliant as moonshine and each having 1 black ear, either right or left. If you bring the dowry before my daughter is married to another man, I will certainly give her to you." Richika departed, a wry smile playing on his lips. The king did not expect him to return with the dowry. Returning to his hermitage, Richika began a difficult sacrifice for worshipping the god Varun. For many months, the powerful sage performed the ritual until, finally pleased with his worship, Varun appeared on Richika's request. Varun gave him the 1,000 horses precisely to his specifications. Mounting the chief stallion, Richika led the team of celestial steeds to Gadhi's palace. Gadhi's eyes opened wide in surprise when he saw the fine-looking horses stomping the ground in his palace gardens. He turned to Richika. "You have done well, O sage. In accordance with my word, you may accept my daughter's hand." After the marriage, Satyavati proved herself to be a most affectionate wife. She was always diligent in her service to her saintly husband. One day, the queen visited her daughter in her hermitage. "Satyavati, you were our only child, she said, your father and I had always hoped you would marry a great king and your son would inherit your father's kingdom. But now you are married to a sage who will protect the people when the king retires. Satyavati smiled. Mother, my husband is a highly powerful mystic. If you desire, he can enable us both to have a powerful progeny. I too desire a son. Laughingly, she said, maybe we two, mother and daughter, can raise our sons together. The queen was agreeable and stayed until the sage returned home that evening. Satyavati then asked him if he could enable them both to have worthy sons. Desiring to please his wife, Richika agreed. Return tomorrow in the late afternoon, he told the queen. I will prepare a suitable oblation for you. Richika performed a fire sacrifice to obtain sons early the following day and prepared 2 oblations, one for his wife with the Brahmin mantra and the other for his mother-in-law with the Kshatriya mantra. He instructed his wife which oblation to give her mother and which she should take for herself. When he went to the Ganga to perform his worship, the queen arrived when the sun was low in the sky. Are the oblations ready? She asked the daughter eagerly. Satyavati laughed at seeing her mother's excitement. Dear mother, this one is for you and this one is for me. I waited till you come so we could eat them together. Are they both the same? Asked the queen. No, he told me this one is meant for you and this one is for me. Satyavati said, indicating the 2 bowls of sweet rice. The queen frowned. Surely the one for Satyavati was superior. The sage would doubtlessly favor his wife. May I eat yours? Asked the queen. I am not sure, said Satyavati. My husband was particular about which we should both eat. Detecting her mother's disappointment, she added, I am quite sure they are of equal potency. My husband would not treat you any less favorably than me. Well, if that is the case, then why not let me eat your oblation? Asked the queen. The gentle Satyavati finally acquiesced. When Richika returned home and understood what had happened in his absence, he said to Satyavati, you have made a great mistake. Your son will be fierce Kshatriya, able to punish everyone, and your brother will be learned scholar in spiritual science. Satyavati pacified her husband and requested that her son not be a Kshatriya. Richika replied, then your grandson will be a Kshatriya spirit. Of course, Satyavati gave birth to a son whom they named Jamadagni. Shukadev continued, Satyavati later became the sacred river Kaushika to purify the world. Her son Jamadagni married Renu's daughter, Renuka. They had many sons, the youngest of whom was Parashurama, an incarnation of Vishnu. When the royal dynasty became excessively proud and disrespected the Brahmins, Parashurama slew them all. Although their offense was not severe, he killed them to lessen the earth's burden. A look of puzzlement crossed Parikshit's face. What offense did the Kshatriyas commit for which Parashurama annihilated their dynasties? Shukadev explained that there was a mighty king of the Haya dynasty called Kartavirya Arjun. His spiritual master was sage Dattatreya, an incarnation of Vishnu. By satisfying his spiritual master, Kartavirya Arjun attained the 8 mystic perfections and became undefeatable. Dattatreya gave him 1,000 arms, unobstructed sensory power, beauty, influence, strength, fame, and perfection in mystic power. Having become so opulent, he roamed all over the universe unopposed. Once, while enjoying the river Narmada, the excessively proud Kartavirya, surrounded by beautiful women and wearing a victory garland, stopped the water's flow with his arms and forced it in the opposite direction. Consequently, farther up the river, Ravan's camp became inundated. This was intolerable to the 10-headed Ravan, who considered himself a great fighter. He hurried to Kartavirya's camp and attempted to humiliate him in the presence of his womenfolk. Kartavirya easily captured Ravan as if he were just a troublesome monkey and imprisoned him in Mahismati. Later he released him neglectfully. Now listen, Shukadev said, as I tell you what he did to incur Parashurama's wrath. The lion pack turned and formed a circle, baring their teeth as they prepared to leap at their tormentors. "Stay back," Kartavirya yelled at his men. "Leave them to me." With 40 arms, he lifted 20 bows and drew back 20 arrows. Charging his stallion at the back, he released them all. The lions hurled themselves through the air at him. Kartavirya's arrows pierced the hearts of 10 of them, who all dropped dead into a pool of their blood. The other 10, somehow wounded, continued their charge. 3 lions landed on the stallion, tearing furiously at its hide with their claws. Kartavirya drew 3 swords, which he thrust into their chests. Vomiting blood, the lions lost their hold and slipped lifeless to the ground. Simultaneously, Kartavirya had strung another 7 arrows and released them at the beasts, who roared and lashed viciously at his stallion's feet. Within seconds, the roaring ceased, and Kartavirya sat triumphantly in his saddle. Bloodied but exuberant with the excitement of the hunt, his retinue of soldiers and ministers who had helped trap the lion pack applauded loudly. It was no mean feat to kill a pack of 20 wild lions single-handedly. Kartavirya laughed raucously at his ministers rode up to congratulate him. Then turning to his chief minister, he barked, "Have these lions properly cremated? I wish to hunt more. Let at least 100 men follow me." The king dismounted and called for his servant to bring him refreshments. Hunting was thirsty work. Sitting under the shade of a tree, he waited impatiently. Finally, his servant approached with a golden goblet of cool water and a large platter of cut fruits. "Distribute some of them to the men as well," he ordered. "My lord, our supplies are low. There is not enough for everyone." On questioning his ministers, Kartavirya discovered that the Ganges flowed nearby. Gulping his water down in one draught, he stood up. "We will ride. I want to find the Ganges before midday, then we will hunt till dusk." As the horsemen galloped in the direction where they thought the Ganga flowed, they saw smoke from the single fire. The king lifted his hand and halted his men. "That smoke over there must be a hermitage. Wait here while I check that we are headed the right way." The king galloped toward the smoke, reining in his horse a few feet from the sage who sat meditating by the fire. The hermit opened his eyes and said genially, "Welcome to the humble ashram of Jamdagni, Your Honor. As by your presence, how may I serve you?" "You honor us by your presence. How may I serve you?" Kartavirya laughed. "It's kind of you to offer your hospitality, Sage Jamdagni, but I travel with 100 companions. I have merely come to ask for directions towards the Ganga, where my men can refresh themselves and their horses. The Ganga is walking distance from my hermitage, but you don't need to go there. I would feel honored to offer you 100 men and all your horses refreshment and hospitality." Kartavirya looked around the bare hermitage. He saw only a few straw and mud cottages, each with a clay water jug and a small reed basket filled with wild fruits. Outside, grazingly nearby, was a single cow and a calf. A Brahman woman, presumably the sage's wife, squatted outside one of the huts, cleaning rice. The king turned back to the sage. He would humor him by agreeing, and on returning to his men, they could circumvent this small hermitage on their way to the Ganga. "No need to embarrass the old ascetic. As you wish," he replied jovially. "I will ride back and bring my men." "That will not be necessary. I will send a servant to fetch them." Kartavirya's face screwed up in confusion. "What servant?" "Kamadhenu," the sage said. He called in the direction of the cow. "Dispatch a servant to fetch the king's men. Also provide our guest with a comfortable seat, a fine table, ample cooked foods, cut fruits, and refreshing drinks of his liking." From nowhere, a well-dressed manservant mounted on a stallion appeared and immediately rode in the direction from which Kartavirya had come. Before the dumbstruck king could say anything, a lavish seat covered in silk appeared behind him, and in front an ivory table full laden with many sweet and savory dishes, ripe fruits, and gold goblets filled to the brim with various drinks. The king gaped in amazement. He possessed all 8 mystic powers, yet he could not instantly display such magic. "Kamadhenu, do you expect the king to serve himself, said the sage, please provide servants to attend to him. Again from out of the air well-dressed manservants appeared. With impeccable etiquette they invited Kartavirya Arjun to sit and served him with food and drink. When his 100 men arrived, they too were served with equal lavishness. Tables filled with exquisite dishes cooked in clarified butter appeared as if from nowhere. Many servants ran about attending to the men's every need. Whatever they asked for was immediately provided. None of them had ever seen such a display of opulence. They all ate in stunned silence. Jamadagni wondered if they were bored. Turning to the cow, he said, Kamadhenu, provide for them whatever entertainment will most delight their hearts. As soon as he said this, many beautiful maidens appeared, accompanied by expert musicians, and performed enchanting dances to the accompaniment of delightful music. Kartavirya's men became elated, and the air soon filled with the sounds of merriment, eating and drinking to their hearts' content. They repeatedly praised the sage's unprecedented hospitality. Only Kartavirya was unhappy. How did a hermit have more affluence than him? He looked over at Kamdhanu. She was wasted on this elderly sage. The fabulous creature should belong to him, the ruler of this land. The king called Jamdagni over and said, I am sure, great sage, that you are aware of the religious injunction that the best of all things should be offered to the king. Is there something deficient in my hospitality? Asked Jamdagni. Becoming impatient, Kartavirya snapped, give me the cow, Jamdagni. Since I am the king, she rightfully belongs to me. Jamdagni folded his palms and in a mild voice replied, my dear king, all good fortune to you. I am always engaged in performing sacrifices for the pleasure of Lord Vishnu. When we Brahmins satisfy Vishnu with our worship, everyone benefits. This celestial cow provides me with everything I need for my sacrifices. Please ask me for something else, since I require Kamdhenu to execute my service to the Lord. Kartavirya Arjun's face darkened. Whatever you require for the sacrifice, I will provide. As your king, I demand you give me Kamdhenu. Jamdagni said nothing. Kartavirya Arjun pushed his chair back and stood up abruptly, seized the cow and her calf. He commanded his men, we are returning to Mahismati. The soldiers hesitated. They feared disobeying the king, but they equally feared the Brahmin's wrath. The king went around pushing them into action. Go on, do as I tell you. You need not fear this Brahmin. He must forgive, but I shall have your heads if you disobey me. Seeing that, Jamdagni said nothing to protest. The soldiers forcibly captured the crying cow and her calf. Hearing the commotion, Renuka ran to her husband's side and watched in bewilderment. Dear husband, what are these men doing? They are taking Kamdhenu to Mahismati, the king's capital city. When the sons returned an hour later from foraging for berries and firewood, the king and all his men were gone. Jamdagni sat straight back before the sacred fire, chanting Vedic mantras. The mother was walking back from Ganga carrying a clay jug full of water on her head. Still traumatized by the early events, her face was strained and she looked around fearfully when she heard their footsteps. Parashurama, the youngest of the sons, put his load and hurried to help his mother. Renuka began to weep as he removed the heavy jug from her head. Concerned, all her sons surrounded her. Mother, what is the matter? They asked. She wept and shook her head. While the older boys tried to comfort their mother, Parashuram approached his father, touched his feet, and offered obeisance. Kneeling next to his father, he said, Dear father, please tell me why mother is upset. Jamadagni calmly recounted what had taken place. Parashuram had thought Kamadhenu and her calf were grazing in the meadow nearby. Hearing Kartavirya Arjun had abducted them, he became infuriated. Not hearing his father's petition to remain calm, he went to his hut and collected his great twin-bladed axe, shield, bow, and quiver of arrows. He ran through the forest with bloodshot eyes, following the horse tracks left by Kartavirya Arjun's party. Kartavirya had entered the gates of Mahismati when he heard a mighty war cry. Kartavirya Arjun, you vile thief, turn and face me. You shall pay for your crime against the sinless and tolerant sage Jamdagni. The king swung his charger round to see who was so bold as to challenge him. He saw a tall, powerfully built ascetic, dressed in black deerskin with matted locks of hair, bounding towards him. A huge bow was slung over his shoulder, and as he brandished a fierce-looking axe in one hand and stout wooden shield in the other. Kartavirya had faced many powerful combatants, and his heart had never experienced the slightest trepidation. But now, at the sight of this terrible ascetic, he was seized with fear. Close the gates, he ordered. Make ready for battle. A dangerous foe approaches. Be on your guard. 17 entire battalions were amassed at the city gates within short time. Undeterred, Parashuram repeatedly rammed the heavy gates with his powerful shoulder, while his other arm raised his shield against the missiles that rained down on him. Repeatedly he yelled out of his blood-curdling war cries, "You cowardly men, you cowardly wretch, Kartavirya Arjun, give me battle." Mounting in his chariot, the king ordered that gate be opened with his 17 "You cowardly wretch, Kartavirya Arjun, give me battle." Mounting his chariot, the king ordered that the gates be opened. With his 17 battalions, he felt confident the bellicose ascetic could soon be dead. When the gates opened, Parashuram rushed into the midst of the elephants, charioteers, cavalry, and infantry. The air was filled with shouts, winning, and trumpeting. Parashuram stood with his feet apart, braced for battle, and wielding his fearsome chopper like the god of death. He fought with the speed of the mind and the winds, slicing his enemies apart with his axe. Mountains of dead bodies soon surrounded him. Leaping over them, he began to run through the enemy lines, severing legs, arms, and shoulders. He slew chariot drivers, horses, and elephants along with the fighters. As the panicked enemy fled, he took out his bow and arrows and cut them down. The ground became muddy with blood. Kartavirya rode in a fury. He fitted arrows onto 500 bows with his 1,000 arms and took aim. Parashuram immediately released enough shafts with only one bow to cut to pieces all the weapons in the hands of Kartavirya. When this astonishing feat of archery destroyed his arrows, Kartavirya uprooted many trees and hills with his bare hands and rushed toward his foe. Parashuram whirled his axe with great force and cut off Kartavirya's arms just as one might lop off a serpent's hoods. After that, Parashuram cut off the Kartavirya's Arjun's head, which fell like a mountain peak. After that, Parashuram cut off Kartavirya's Arjun's head, which fell like a mountain peak. The king had 10,000 sons who had come out to support their father. When he was killed before their eyes, they were seized with terror, and their father had been invincible. They looked with horror at Parashuram and then turned and fled in all directions. Unchallenged, Parashuram marched into Mahasmati and called out, "O Brahmins of Mahasmati, return to me my father's cow and her calf." When the pining cow and her calf were returned to Parashuram, he comforted them and immediately took them back to his father's hermitage. His brothers surrounded and embraced him, while Kamdhenu rushed to Jamadagni and licked his hands, happy to be reunited with the sage. After bathing in the Ganges, Parashuram sat with his father and brothers while Renuka served them their meal, and he recounted all that had happened. His brothers cheered his exploits, but Jamadagni raised a hand to quieten them. In a grave voice, he admonished his youngest son, "O great hero, my dear son Parashuram, you have unnecessarily killed the king who is supposed to embody the gods. Thus you have committed a great sin." Parashuram objected, "Father, Kartavirya Arjun was not fit to be called a king. He was a low-minded thief and offender of Brahmins who deserved to be killed." Jamdagni waited patiently for his impetuous son to finish his outburst, then calmly replied, "My dear son, as Brahmins, we are widely respected for our forgiveness. Because of this quality, Lord Brahma, the Supreme Spiritual Master of this universe, has achieved his post. A Brahmin must cultivate forgiveness, which is illuminating like the sun. The Supreme Lord Hari is pleased with those who are forgiving." Parashuram hung his head and his father spoke the truth. He had been unable to contain the rage. Folding his palms in submission, he said, "Father, how can I atone my wrong?" So Parashuram hung his head. His father had spoken the truth. He had been unable to contain his rage. Folding his palms in submission, he said, "Father, how can I atone for my wrong?" Jamdagni's demeanor remained solemn. "My dear son, killing a king is more sinful than killing a Brahmin. Only if you become Krishna consciousness and worship the holy places can atone you for this great sin." Okay. Next time we'll read from Parashuram kills the Kshatriyas. Thank you for joining. Hare Krishna.